talk to you just a little bit this morning. I know y'all love it when I say just a little bit. But if you got your Bibles, turn over to Ezekiel. Not Ezekiel, I'm sorry. Ecclesiastes. I'm looking at my notes here and it says ECC. I don't know what I thought that was Ezekiel, but Ecclesiastes 1. We'll start at about the 9th verse. It says, the thing that has been, it is that which shall be. And that which is done is that which shall be done. And there is no new thing under the sun. Is there anything whereof it may be said, see, this is new? It hath been already of old time which was before us. And there is no remembrance of former things, neither shall there be any remembrance of the things that are to come, and those that shall come after. He said there's nothing really new under the sun. Everything kind of has a tendency to work in circles. It might not fit exactly, but the pattern will be there. And over and over and over, the same thing has a tendency to come about. And he said, because it's the same spirit in man, folks, from the beginning. And we know around here that man is in dominion, and the same seeds brings the same harvest. But he said, there's no remembrance of former things, neither there shall be any remembrance of the things that shall come with those that shall come after. In other words, they said, because we don't really look at history and associate it with what's happening in our life, we don't see what's happening, even though it's already happened before. But because we don't associate it, we don't see what is happening to us now. Now, we read all that as a foundation, and we want to keep that in our mind. Nothing new, that everything happens in circles. Everything happens in circles. It keeps coming around because man always falls after the same mistakes, after the same passions, after the same lust. Always listens to the same lies of the enemy. Now, if you will, go with me to Genesis, the 47th chapter. Keeping the foundation scriptures in our mind. Nothing new under the sun. What is has been of old. And we'll start our story here. It's the story of Joseph, which was the son of Rachel and Jacob, which was Israel. And it's a story that most of us know. You know, Joseph was sold by his brethren to a band of Ishmaelites that took him down to Egypt, and he wound up in Pharaoh's castle. And he went through his trials, and Pharaoh threw him in the dungeon, but God never left him. And in the dungeon, he interpreted some dreams for other people that was in there, and they came to pass. And then one day, Pharaoh had a dream. And he had a dream of 7, the Bible calls them kine, it's cattle. 7 came up, and they were well-favored and well-fed and fat. And after those 7 came up, some ill-favored kine, and ate up the fat ones in his dream. And then he had, in that same dream, he had a dream of ears of corn. 7 of them looked good, and then after them came 7 that was not good, that had blast. And it troubled Pharaoh, and somebody told Pharaoh about Joseph, and Joseph went and interpreted the dream for him. And so Pharaoh had exalted him to the second in the kingdom. Now, our story begins in verse 13 of Genesis 47. And Joseph had told him that the dream meant this. it meant they would have 7 years of plenty coming. But after 7 years of the plenty, there was going to be 7 years of absolute famine. And we all know in the Bible that 7 is used for a complete, it's a number of completion. And so they had 7 years of prosperity. But the 7 years of prosperity had ended. And in those 7 years of prosperity, Joseph had gathered up all the corn and the food that the land grew and had kept it. Because God had told him that there was coming 7 years of famine. Through Pharaoh's dream, he understood that. In verse 13, it says this, "And there was no bread in all the land, for the famine was very sore, so that the land of Egypt and all the land of Canaan fainted by reason of the famine." In other words, folks was in trouble. "And Joseph gathered up all the money that was found in the land of Egypt and in the land of Canaan, for the corn which they bought, and Joseph brought the money into Pharaoh's house. And when the money failed in the land of Egypt and in the land of Canaan, all the Egyptians came unto Joseph and said, Give us bread, for why should we die in thy presence, for the money faileth? And Joseph said, Give your cattle, and I will give for your cattle if the money fails. And they brought their cattle unto Joseph, and Joseph gave them bread in exchange for horses and for the flocks and for the cattle of the herd and for the asses, and he fed them with bread for all the cattle that year. But when that year was ended, they came unto him the second year and said unto him, We shall not hide it from my Lord, how that our money is spent, and my Lord also has our herds of cattle, and there is not aught left in the sight of my Lord, but our bodies and our lands. Whereof shall we die before thine eyes, both we and our land? Buy us and our land for bread, and we and our land will be servants unto Pharaoh. And give us seed that we may live and not die, that the land be not desolate. And Joseph bought all the land of Egypt for Pharaoh, and the Egyptians sold every man to his field, because the famine prevailed over them. So the land became Pharaoh's. And as for the people, he removed them to cities from one end of the border of Egypt even unto the other. Only the land of the priest bought he not. Now the priest had a portion assigned them, and Pharaoh of Pharaoh, and did eat the portion with Pharaoh, and Pharaoh gave them, whereof they sold not their lands. Now, we look at this, and it said when the money failed, Now what we see is that Joseph gathered all the money into Pharaoh's treasure, and the flow stopped. There was no exchange. He bankrupted the economy that they had left. And the money failed. And when it failed, folks, then Joseph began to say, if you want to eat, sell me your cattle. He had the corn, he had the food supply. And so I'll give you food for your cattle and for your horses. What we see here, number one, the government began to control the money flow. Are you hearing me? Yeah. Then they began to control all the industry. Then they control the seed for growing. See, the industry of Egypt, everything was tied to their horses, to their mules, to their cattle. I mean, they were farmers. They didn't have trucks to haul stuff. They hauled it on wagons. So now Joseph has control of the finances. He has control of the industry. He has control of the food supply. He has control of the people, even to the place where he told them where to live, and they went there and done whatever the government told them to do because they had nothing left. People became slaves in their own country to their own government. Is this registered with anybody? It works in circles. Now, if you'll notice at the end there, it said he didn't bother the priest. In other words, he kept the priest there to keep the people in line, because man is a spiritual being whether he wants to admit it or not. But Pharaoh was taking care of the priest. Yeah. So you know what the priest was doing? They were keeping the people in line for the government. Where did he get that? The priest, those who were leading the people in spiritual things, were showing the people that they should be obeying the government. So everything was working smooth for the government, but the people had become slaves in their own land. Now, let's fast forward to August of 2015. The people who study, and I'm not a financial guy. If it was, I'd have a lot more money than I got. But the people who study finances, and you know, we've got a doomsday clock, where folks, you know, where they will set those hands according, you know, forward and backward according to what they think that we're pushing ourselves into a nuclear situation or not. But we got a doomsday clock also for the financial stability of the world. And I was reading an article this week said they had just moved it to 1 minute to midnight. Now, you know who controls the money? The governments, folks. The governments control the money. And now I was studying this when I turned on the television, and I said, well, okay, Lord. And they were talking about what the stock markets was doing because China had devalued its money. Y'all see that? It devalued its money, and I saw yesterday where it was talking about already some of the richest people in the world had lost in the billions. Billions with a B. So the stock markets begin to quiver. There's coming a time, folks, when the money will fail. And we'll have to have a new currency worldwide. How many knows that we're already so uniquely linked worldwide that if one economy goes down, they all suffer? And every time you turn the television on, another nation is struggling to pay its debt. We saw Greece and we saw Spain was you know, struggling. We see another nation struggling trying to pay its debt. America, we don't know how much it owes. We know it's over 18 trillion. But the world has begun to be in a financial crisis. It hasn't failed yet, but I'm telling you, and I'm telling you by the word of God, that the money will fail. There will come a time when it will fail, and we will have to accept a one-world currency in order to survive. The World Banks, which is supplied by the world governments, controls the money flow. Sometime in the near future, it will crash, and the world will come up with a new currency worldwide. Well, we see it happening. Whether you want to believe it or not, it's going to, one day, it's going to happen, and when it happens, it will happen so suddenly that the world will be shocked. But all, you know, for the last several years, we'll see those stock markets just all of a sudden plunge. And then they'll bring them back up and they'll plunge. But one day they won't come back. How do I know? Because the Bible talks about a time when the gold and the silver will be worthless. Canker is what James said, canker. And a new currency will come forth. Well, what about the industry? What about the industry? Do you know that the government controls every industry in the world? If they want you to prosper, you will prosper. If they want to shut you down, they can. You better start, check the coal industry now. Check the coal industry, because it was causing global warming. Yeah. We won't get into that. But the EPA in America, and it's been this way in a lot of the other countries for years. The government controls everything industry-wide. The EPA is now becoming God in America. If they want you to operate, you can, and if they don't want you to operate, they'll regulate you out of business. Last year, the last lead melting company in the United States shut down because they were so regulated they could no longer make a profit. We have not one left. Most of our coal industry is dying because the government decided that don't fit the agenda. The government owns control of the industry. The EPA, you know, we talked about it in the Bible study a few weeks ago, said that now they have taken full control of all the water supply in America. They said that, they declared that they own the mud holes. Even the mud holes. And in 25 states already, it's against the law to even save rainwater. You put a barrel under the leak of your house, and they find out about it, they come out and charge you. In 25 states already. You don't think the government again? And see, we look at this thing in America, which are just in America. No, it's worldwide. It's happening worldwide. Because we're moving into a one world government. Well, so what's happening? All these nuclears and all this stuff happening. Well, this thing's going to happen to bring it all together. There is. There's things that's going to happen to bring it all together, and we're on the threshold of some of those things happening, folks. Now, in a lot of countries, for years already, private land ownership is no longer. And we don't hear much about it, but several years ago, there was a little move came on, and they were saying this, that private land ownership was the #1 detriment against being equal, supplying everybody, get rid of private ownership of land, and you know, now we can just divide to everybody according to the need. It's coming to America. Well, no, Daddy, we're going to have it in America. You ever heard of a law called eminent domain?
Yes.
What eminent domain will do, they will say, hey, we're going to seize your land because we got something better to do with it. And without land, and without industry, and without seed, you are a slave to a government. And one day this is coming about, and people will line up for a mark to get their share. Now, what about the seed? See, we're too busy trying to live right now to pay attention to what's happening. Can I get an amen? Amen. We're too busy trying to live to pay attention to what's happening. But while we are trying to survive, our seed is being genetically modified. So in a few years, if you have seed, you buy it from the government. Here we go. I even saw a guy the other day that said they had to genetically modify the seed because just seed gathering was not sustainable. What? It's been sustainable for 6,000 years and all of a sudden we can't say seed? But 90% of the corn and soybean products in America right now, 90% is genetically modified. Squash, genetically modified. Rice, genetically modified. A lot of the fruits, genetically modified. And there will come a time when they won't produce. You have to have a fresh batch of seed, and guess who's got them? And already they're beginning to genetically modify the farm animals, which is supply of meat. Read just this week. See, they're playing God because they're coming to a time when the government will be God of this world. We're going to get a little further into that. The governments are wanting to be God. You ever notice that they're trying to do away with God? There's a reason for that. They want the people to look to them as God. But I saw this week, a few years ago, they put, it was in mice, jellyfish cells in mice. And you cut the light off. I saw a video on this. You cut the light off and the little mice grow green. Yes. Now they've got green glowing pigs. Pigs. Playing God. Playing God. And they don't know the long term what it's going to do. Our scientists, which is funded also by the government, most of them say, well, genetically modified food's not going to hurt you. But some have said, we don't know because we've had no long-term study. We don't know. But the government is beginning to take control. Hey, the circle has turned. In Joseph's time, it was just that people in that country. But now we're seeing it as a global turning. And it's coming back just like it was in the days of Joseph. Now, I saw, it's been 2 or 3 years ago, where they came up with rice that was immune to most of the diseases that affects regular rice. And they had took human saliva. And I don't know how they do this, but they took human saliva and genetically fused it into the rice seed. I don't know about you, but I don't want to eat nobody's spit. But the same things in human saliva, they're putting in rice so that it is immune to a lot of the diseases. But I'm going to tell you something, folks. The government's playing God. God ain't playing. God ain't playing. For whosoever mocks him or tries to unseat him will face the consequences. Now, we're just, again, Joseph took control of all the people, of everything that they had. He took, they were totally under his, whatever Joseph said, because he had it all. In next month, the UN is launching a new system, a global educational system initiative, is what it's called. Launches next month. A lot of things happen next month, folks. But in their global initiative, they're saying our goal is to put every child in America, in the world, into school to educate them. And you know what they're educating them? Not to think for yourself, it's in a global mindset. We're going to learn them to be a citizen of the global community. in America already, homeschooling is under the gun.
Yeah.
You know what your children, what the children, our grandchildren are being taught in schools across America already? Your parents are just old focus. They don't know. They don't know. Don't let them trap you up in religion. You know, I saw, some of y'all probably saw this. One of the, I wish I could remember where she was working at. She was a professor. And she said, for a parent to instill their values in their children was a form of child abuse. Child abuse. Don't you tell your children how to live. Don't you teach them right and wrong. Let the government.
Yes.
So that they can be under control. So the government can become God. Now, is all of this lining up with the Bible?
Yes.
Folks, we absolutely have moved back to the future. Now, or back to history. Now, the circle has turned and we're in it. Now, Isaiah, the prophet, said, I want you to know none of this has surprised God.
That's right.
None of it. You've heard me say before, I know it's got to get on Satan's nerves. It's got to keep him frustrated. I bet he's got ulcers as big as baseballs. Because everything he starts to do, God's got him. Got his plan already wrote out. So all he can do is keep people too busy to notice. Too religiously comforted to believe it could happen to them. But Isaiah wrote many, many years before Christ came of a man that would come in the last days to head up this one world government that is coming. And Isaiah called him Assyrian, the Assyrian. And in Isaiah, the 10th chapter, talking about this man, 13th verse, he says this. He said, by my strength, by the strength of my hand I have done it. In other words, he's given the whole world. And by my wisdom, for I am prudent. And I have removed the bounds of the people, and I have robbed their treasures, and I have put down the inhabitants like a violent man. And my hand has found the nest of the riches of the people, and as one gathers eggs that are left, have I gathered the earth. And there was none that moved the wing, or opened the mouth, or peeped. Do you see that?
Amen.
He said, I've gathered the earth, and I have gathered their riches. What did Joseph do? He gathered the riches, folks. He gathered everything. Now, let me show you something that will fit that right quick, but I'm going to say this. He said, I've removed the bounds. You look up that word, the Hebrew word said, I have erased their borders.
Hallelujah. Yes.
I have erased their borders. I've made them a one world country. I have erased their borders. Now, Revelation 13, and we're down about 16. Remember again that in Joseph's time the priests were left so that the people, they could keep the people tranquilized into doing what the government wanted them to do. But in Revelation 13, down about the 16th verse, we find, if you read that whole thing, it's a false prophet or a false religion rising up in the last day with a false prophet leading it.
Yes.
But see, we've got so religiously correct, we can't say any religion is false anymore. Are you judging? You bet you. By the Bible. By the Bible. But look what he does here. We've got the man that's coming that's going to rule this thing, and we've got, here's the false priest. And he causes all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and bond, to receive a mark in their right hand or in their foreheads. And no man might buy or sell save he has the mark of the name of the beast or the number of his name. And here is wisdom, that him that understand count the number of the beast, for it is the number of a man, his number is 666, 666. Now here is the false religion in the last days, and what are they doing? They're saying, y'all just listen to the government.
Yes.
Make an image of the Antichrist. Listen to him. Listen to him. Have you noticed how so much of today's modern religion just goes whichever way the world's going right now? Whatever's popular, that's whatever's preached and embraced. And those that don't preach it and don't embrace it are counted as some sort of heretics. Some, people that don't love Jesus. Well, y'all just don't love people. Y'all are just haters. It's all moving in to what the Bible said would happen and what the patterns had laid out for thousands of years. Are y'all with me? How could all this be happening? How could it all be happening? Well, how did it happen in Joseph's time? They got used. Everybody got used to everything. Everything was going good for 7 years. And before that, it wasn't going bad. But for 7 years, they had anything they wanted. It was absolutely prosperity. And then all of a sudden, the goodies was gone. Did y'all see what happened in Greece when they cut off their goodies? They tore the country up because they were used to the government taking care of them. And when the government could no longer take care of them, they burnt buildings and they was in the street rioting. See, they had it set up so where they could retire in their 50s. And the government was just giving them stuff. But it ran out. It ran out. Margaret Thatcher said one time that was the problem with socialism, was after a while they run out of other people's money.
That's right.
And see, when the goodies run out, folks, then chaos ensues. And when chaos ensues, then there has got to be order. And that order is setting itself up already
Yes.
to control. But it's going to be after the chaos. Now, you look at what's happening around us right now. And you read the Bible, and there is going to be a nuclear exchange. I don't know whether it's going to hit America, but I'm going to tell you something, folks. The way the people's mind are right now, if there was another Hiroshima, the whole world would stand up and say, we can't have this.
Right.
Save us, government, because we've done away with God. We've done away with God. But look at what's happening. Well, let me just say this before we get any further in that. Some of y'all, I guess everybody in here knows who Rick and Bubba is. Did y'all see or hear that when Rick and him had went over to southern France on a vacation? But he went over there, and they were trying to set up. I never did get the whole thing about it, but it was a Christian-based organization that was going to start working in southern France. And he said they had a couple from that place where they were at. And they were sitting around the table talking, and said the lady just got real emotional. She said, I don't know what y'all talking about. They were talking about the Bible and Christian principles. And the lady said, I don't know what y'all talking about. She said, now y'all are saying some things I remember slightly my grandmother used to say. She said, but we've got none of that here. And he said the churches that they used to have were now just souvenir places. No church there. None. And said the woman said, we don't have any kind of religious-based morality. All we have is what the government tells us. You think it ain't happening? It's happening. It's happening. And I saw yesterday where a minister was talking about unless the church woke up, there wouldn't be any Christianity left. And I wanted to tell him, oh yes, there will be. Because Christ said the gates of hell would not prevail against his church. There's going to be some, it just ain't going to be here. Or when the world rejects it to that point, she's gone. But I want you to know this, folks. And you look around us, and when we see what's happening, and we read what the Bible said would be happening in these days, we've got droughts, we've got floods, we've got wildfires. And it's not just happening here, it's worldwide. Saw last week where southern Russia, their crops were being devastated by locusts. Locusts had eat up all the crops. California, where we get a lot of our fruits and our vegetables coming out of California, for 4 years has been in a drought. 4 years. And now the weather people are warning that they could be flooded this winter by some kind of a freak El Nino weather pattern. It could be flooded. But see, all these things are not just happening accidentally. The nuclear threat, folks, too, grows greater every day. North Korea is threatening South Korea now with a nuclear bomb. Iran's building them one. We're helping them. And they're chanting death to Israel and death to America. And our government saying, oh, that ain't going to really happen. But see, out of all of this, folks, it's going to come exactly what the Bible said, and we see it building up. Well, most folks don't see it, but it's there anyway. It's there anyway. And the reason the world can't see it, folks, is because the things of the Spirit of God is spiritually discerned. It's in there. God ain't hid it. It's in there. So again, where a fellow said the other day, somebody had talked about the end times, and he said that, that's just that religious stuff. Said Christians has been saying Christ is going to return for 2,000 years. And somehow. Well, let me tell you something, folks. God is a God of His Word. Christ could not have come at any other time. You remember the story, and I'm getting a little off, but it's all right anyway. I'm fixing to let you go. But you remember the story of Moses out in the wilderness there when they ran out of water and the Lord told them to smite the rock? The Bible said that rock was Jesus. It was a type of Jesus. He smote the rock. And water came out. And then they all drank, and their cattle drank, and they were saved by the water out of the rock, which is a type of Jesus. But then they went along, and they ran out of water again, and the Lord said, speak to the rock. And Moses went over there and struck it twice. Broke the pattern. And Moses, who had followed God, had given his whole life to God. From the time, he was brought out of Egypt. Moses, who had put up with all these people that God had sent to bring out. Moses, who had stood in the gap for them and had prayed and believed in God. Moses, that had done all these things. When he broke the pattern, God said, you can't go into the promised land. He didn't get to go into the promised land because he broke the pattern. Could I tell you something, folks? The biblical pattern of Jesus has him gone for 2,000 years and back in the third.
Yes. Hallelujah.
The biblical pattern, all of them, has him gone 2,000 years after the crucifixion and then back in the third. He could not have come at another time. We need to, he told Isaiah, the Lord told Isaiah, he said, I've declared the end from the beginning. We need to get back and take heart and look and see what God declared and believe that. But getting back to where we're at and where Joseph was at, you notice in the time of Joseph that the regular people didn't know what was happening? If they didn't know what was happening, they'd been putting up stuff too for 7 years. And am I telling you start storing up stuff? No, I'm not. It's good to have some stuff. It'd be good to have a few weeks supply, but you cannot put enough stuff back to keep you from now on. But God can supply you from now on. He can. Because see, over in Joseph's time, there was God's people over that had came into Egypt. And the Bible said that they multiplied and increased. Go back and read this whole story over at 47. God's folks, right in the middle of all of this stuff, they multiplied and increased. God can take care of it if we walk with Him. We can't make it our way. But He's already got a way made for you.
Amen.
But see, the world wants you into one mindset. The world wants you not depending on Jesus. The spirit that Satan has unleashed on the world wants you to whatever comes. You know, everybody's offended at everything now. And so the spirit that's in the world says, hey, you're a Christian, you can't offend them. You just got to go along with them. I'm sorry. I don't. Well, they won't like you. Well, I won't care. And don't. I saw this week, and some of y'all probably saw, it makes you want to pull out what hair you got now. They've got a product called midget raisins. Did y'all see this?
Yeah.
Midget, small raisins. Midget raisins. And they're changing the name because the little people didn't like it. Changing the name because somebody was offended. Said Satan is using that offended thing to get people to go along with everything. If somebody's offended, you got to go right along with it. No, that is a trick of the devil to get you believing that if you just go along with everything, man will make a wonderful utopia. It's not happening.
Same thing with mother, father.
Oh yeah, no mother and father. No mother and father. See, that's all changing it. It's changing it. You can't say, they're even doing away with the bathrooms, folks, male and female. But in the beginning, God made them male and female. And I don't care what surgery you have. God still knows who's Adam and who's Eve. But see, those people that's following along life just don't have a clue where they're at. So like I said, the man the other day was talking about, well, Christians has been saying that for 2,000 years and he ain't come and it ain't happening. Don't realize that even with that, they're falling right into the biblical pattern.
Amen.
Because the Spirit moving through Peter had him write this. There shall come to pass in the last days scoffers, walking after their own lust and saying, where is the promise of his coming? For since the fathers fell asleep, all things continue as they were from the beginning of creation. They fit into the mold that Paul wrote about when he said they would profess themselves to be wise and become fools.
Yes.
We've had the time of plenty, some folks, and we're approaching the time of famine. Famine in the land. Famine for the desire of the Word of God. Famine because all of the goodness that we've been having will one day fall apart. Now, if you'll read Revelations, the 6th chapter, we're not going there, we're fixing to let you go. Revelation, the 6th chapter, he talks about opening the seals of judgment, and the horses came in, they're represented by horses, came forth from the Antichrist, and except from the Antichrist, it comes wars, and comes famine, and comes death, and all these things, they're coming. John saw it, folks. It's not a fantasy. It's coming. And it's already on the horizon. But I want you to understand this. I've got a bunch more that we could, but we're going to let you go. But before Revelation 6, which tells about the judgments that's going to be poured out upon the earth, there's Revelation 4. In Revelation 4, John hears a voice says, come up here.
Woo.
And he looks. And in heaven is a symbolic church already seated. Already seated. Folks, we're going to see things in the coming days. It's going to turn the world upside down. Hell's coming, but heaven's already won.
Hallelujah.
Through a man named Jesus. You can change your direction today. You can change where you're at in prophecy today. But the time's coming when our time as man will be run out. And wherever it finds us is where we'll stand before God. Jesus died so that we could live.
Yes, he did.
Don't die. Don't die. I'm not talking about physically. Don't die. Because there is life. And more abundant life. Not just here, but there. He's coming after a bride has made herself ready. Folks, we need to get this word like we've never been in this word before. And pray for understanding, for wisdom, and for guidance. Because there's nothing more powerful than that word. And what God has said is what's going to happen.
Hallelujah.
It's what's going to happen. We're approaching the day that the Bible calls the day of Jacob's trouble. And we have set it up in Israel. But out of Jacob's trouble, folks, it's going to come a king that's going to reign on the earth. I hope you've got something out of this. How about preach myself happy? But it's true, folks. It's the truth.